Hey, Sox fans, welcome back. Hot takes and heaters via the FutureSox engine. We're under that FutureSox umbrella. We're giving you all of the Chicago White Sox centric stuff. However, with the way this team has been playing, we got to sprinkle in, some prospect stuff here and there. I mean, that's just the reality. He's Danny Miller. I'm Nick Murawski. It is great to be with you. If you're joining us live, jump in the comments. We'd love to hear from you as the Sox won here on Tuesday night. Audio available absolutely everywhere. Subscribe to the FutureSox YouTube channel. We do appreciate that. Danny Miller, good to be back with you after a week off. I think you're muted, Danny.
There we go. How about that?
There you go, man. Now say what you got to say.
Yeah, I have a tendency to do that. It seems like last few weeks here. I apologize, but I was just gonna say, it's good to be back here with you. You and I both had some scheduling difficulties throughout last week. Yours sounded like they were a little more fun than mine, though.
Right.
You did attend a home game last Tuesday, and
yeah.
I unfortunately had a lot of other things going on that kept me busy, but I'm happy to report that the knee is near 100% at this point. Saw the doc yesterday. He told me that I have more range of motion at this point in my recovery than about 95 to 99% of the patients he normally sees. So,
okay.
Quick shout out to Dr. Luke, Dr. Kevin Luke, I should say, former White Sox team surgeon.
So, look at you. All right.
Yeah.
Wow,
yeah.
Only the best.
Hooking me up. And he was during the good years, in the 90s.
I was about to
2000s.
say that could have been good or bad. But back then it was a good thing. Sox were relatively healthy back then.
Indeed. How's things with you in recent times, bud?
Good, man. I was at the game on Tuesday. It was the second game of the Nats, that doubleheader. Was there with my folks and my wife and with my little son, 2 years old, and it was kind of a cool moment. I shared some of this on Good Guys Talk Back on Sunday, but it was a fun moment because the way the Sox have been playing, which has been garbage, and adult fans like us, fans that have been around for decades, or just even the last 7 years or so, or maybe just the last couple of years, and you're like, what is going on with this organization? It feels like there's no direction. It's doom and gloom, and my kid doesn't know that. I mean, he's a fifth generation White Sox fan, and he just was there having a good time. It's the food, it's the atmosphere. We absolutely got a campfire milkshake, and he had some of it, and he was in heaven. And then Andrew Vaughn, home run, number one of the night. He had two of them, and
I was waiting for that to come up.
And my son just throws his arms up in the air, watching the fireworks, in awe. Like, what is happening now? What are these explosions out there in the sky? And so to see the game and experience the game, the Sox ended up winning. To see it that way, it kind of brought me back down to just, man, the slogan is corny, better at the ballpark. But when you're just gathering with family, with friends, and, in this situation, this was my son's first game this season. He's been to a bunch, even though he's only 2. But just to have that moment of, what, he doesn't get it. He doesn't get this organization, this franchise, the anger, the bitterness. He's just here, to have a good time. He got to meet Southpaw, take pictures. That was nice to have that type of moment where I was able to step away from all the stuff that I have to analyze, on a daily basis as the type of fan that I am, and just appreciate it, which was, I think, is a slogan years ago, appreciate the game. So there you have it. That was a nice Tuesday evening.
Yeah, it sounds great. And even though your son doesn't really fully understand what's going on, I'm sure he's feeling that excitement, and maybe some of that just sticks with him as he grows up. You and I have both talked about how being a Sox fan has been a part of us for most of our lives. It becomes kind of ingrained in who you are. And, I just hope that your son can at least, remember some of these feelings of excitement, when even if it's, not a full on memory of a White Sox team that's in the doldrums of a rebuild or a second rebuild in the last, 6-7 years here. So, but
Yeah.
awesome to hear that you
Yeah.
guys had a good time. And you did bring up that you got to see Andrew Vaughn's first home run. Unfortunately, I was starting to think that he was hitting the ball harder. He had kind of fixed a hole in his swing somewhat. I was still seeing that hole a little bit here and there, but he had been hitting the ball harder. And you asked me a couple weeks ago how I felt about him, and I said give him a chance because he had been hitting the ball harder.
Mm-hmm.
And then he hits this dinger, and I thought, okay, maybe he's coming back. And unfortunately, since that dinger last Tuesday, we haven't really seen a ton out of him. So
Yeah.
I don't know what's going on with him, but let me ask you this. What's your feeling on Andrew Vaughn right now? I know there's a lot of folks out there that are saying he has options left. Would you personally send him down and give him time? Do you think it would do him any good to, spend some time in Charlotte, maybe get some confidence back, maybe not feel like he has to approach a fix for himself in midst of a season, even if it is a throwaway season at the MLB level? I think maybe, he might be pressing too much. And do you feel like it's something that can be fixed, or is he one of those guys that you just say it hasn't worked in years?
Yeah, it's such an interesting case. I think this is there's a lot of topics that are recurring topics as Sox fans that I've noticed over several years. And the curious case of Andrew Vaughn is one of them. Now, there's a lot to unpack in my mind, and that is some of it involves the future of Andrew Vaughn. Like, what do the White Sox see with Andrew Vaughn? Is this a guy that they really want to build around? He was an untouchable a couple of years ago, rumored to be untouchable, and all these different trade packages. No. It's Andrew Vaughn. This is the guy, they weren't going to pay Jose Abreu's money, which is looking to be an outstanding decision on the Sox part. But
not that we would ever have any hate towards Jose Abreu.
No. It's just, I think what he got, I was like, whoa, that's goofy money. But Astros were throwing money around thinking he was the guy. He was the missing piece to get them where they needed to go. And they targeted first base, unlike other teams like the Sox, who know their holes but refuse to go and actually go spend the buco bucks. And I'm not saying you got to be crazy and stupid, but the Astros, hey, we need a first baseman. We want that. That's the guy we want. We need that, and they went to go get it. Okay, Jose Abreu has been sent down. So if Abreu could be sent down, then Andrew Vaughn absolutely can be sent down. Now, you might say, well, what's the value of sending him down? Work on what? What is this really going to fix? Look at this team. They're 15-34. They're in the cellar. They're not getting out. Nothing's happening this year. But if you think Andrew Vaughn is your future and you really are like, you know what, there's something here. We want this guy. We want this guy to be our first baseman down the line. Then you're sending him down. And whatever he works on, if he does fix something, it's for the future. It's maybe a little bit of this year, but it's really beyond if you want to keep him and retain him. I don't know. Do you think he's the future? I mean, do you think he's, past his contract? They resign him. They want to retain this guy. Do you think Andrew Vaughn is going to be your first baseman down the line?
I personally don't. And that doesn't necessarily mean that I don't want to see him get some of his confidence back and maybe get some instruction to keep that front hip from flying open. Because like I said, he had been hitting the ball harder, but at times that front hip does fly open a little bit. He's fooled by some pitches that, when pitchers change up speeds on him, he's kind of fooled by that. And I think if you send him down, my particular reason for wanting to send him down is he has the options. You may as well use them. It's not going to hurt anything in a throwaway season.
Yeah.
What it could do is, now that we're in a season where we're talking about trading away anybody of value to kind of help push this rebuild along as fast as possible, if you get him to, you set him down for a couple weeks and he figures something out and he comes back and he mashes for 2 months, there's a possibility that you can get somebody to bite on him. Now, I don't know who is going to want to bite on a 5'11" first baseman, but you never know. Some teams might be looking for that extra hitter in a lineup, and if he comes out swinging hard and he gets, a power stroke going where he hits 10 or 12 in a 2-month period, you might be able to get some value for him. It might not be a ton, but you might be able to get some value for him. But I honestly don't think that he's going to be a guy that is going to be part of the future. And if you don't give him away at the deadline, you hope that he puts it together for the rest of the season, and maybe you get something for him in the offseason.
Yeah, I think the decision to send down is, I don't think it would like rattle his cage or, how dare you send down Andrew Vaughn. I think he gets it. He didn't have an extensive, minor league career, just because of the way the world was working at that point, with COVID and everything. I don't think he did. I don't think he spent too much time in the minors based on what those seasons were like. He was somewhat fast-tracked. It might be nice in this year. Just this is to set you up for success down the line. And go down, see if you can take instruction, see if you can work on some stuff, see if you can, get some assistance in figuring yourself out. I don't know. Maybe he needs a different voice. Maybe he needs a different message.
And the thing is you've got Gavin Sheets on this team. And I know everybody's going to say, well, Gavin Sheets defensively is not the greatest. But again, we're in a season that it doesn't matter. And I would much rather see Gavin Sheets playing first base than clod hopping around in right field. Because, if the last 2 weeks of seeing more of him in the outfield shows us anything, is he's still not the guy. He's not his dad. He's not.
He's never going to be that. He's never going to be. You're asking him to do something that he's not built for. That he can do all of the outfield drills and he could work on angles, and he just doesn't have that athleticism. He doesn't have that. I don't know, that type, if you want to say it, and he doesn't have the arm.
He's been a first baseman his pretty much his whole life. He took it upon himself to take on this role of an outfielder when he saw he was blocked a few years ago. And, his dad had taken him under his wing a little bit more during that time and tried to coach him into an outfielder. And as tough as a lot of us have been on him, he's definitely improved, but that doesn't mean he's going to be the guy that you're going to want to keep out there. He's not going to be continually improving. There's only so much speed that you're going to get out of a guy his size that has never really had a ton of speed before. And reading angles is not something that happens overnight. Reading, having the best routes.
Just your first step, your break. I mean, we've seen a opposition run on his arm. They're running on Benintendi's arm. There's no question about that. When you've got Benintendi and Sheets in the corners, good Lord. I mean, what are we doing?
That's tough.
How can I take you serious? And that's a question I think that I've been asking myself for a while now, is how do I take this team, this organization serious when you're not even taking yourself serious by making some of these decisions?
No. Ian made the joke last week when we were not going to be going live that the White Sox were kind of starting to win some games, and they were working towards that 74 that I predicted. But
yeah,
boy. I mean, let's be honest. It really is. They won a handful of games. I still think they're on pace to only win like in the low 50s at this point, or maybe even upper 40s.
Well, I mean, they lost 100 games in 2018. They lost 101 last season. I looked at, after Monday's game, they were at 48 games in the season, and they're on a worse pace than those other two 100 loss seasons.
Right.
Not by a ton, but I mean, they were 10 games under last year after 48 games. And, they won obviously on Tuesday night to get it back to, I think, 19 games under, but it's bad. It's really bad right now.
Yeah. I mean, it's unfortunate. We knew this going into the season. It was nice to see a little bit of a run where the White Sox offense was putting up some runs and doing some nice things and kind of coming together. We talked about the Pham effect, and that seemed to continue for a little while. And then, the White Sox ran into the Yankees and lost 4 straight. But we come in tonight with a win in Toronto, which is nice. The Blue Jays are not a bad team, and it's not an easy ball to play in. And for the White Sox to go out and do what they did tonight, and Garrett Crochet pitched to Jim. So I'm hoping that they can kind of get back on track a little bit after running into a couple of good teams and tough ballparks to play in. But the reality is we're not going to win anything, even if they go on a run. If they get anywhere close to the 74 that I, kind of jokingly predicted, I would be ecstatic. It would be at least a watchable season, or more watchable than it has been the last couple of seasons. And that might become more difficult as the season goes on and we do kind of trade some of these guys away. But a lot of these young guys that have come up, like you said, we have to talk about prospects, especially in a lost season. A lot of these guys that come up, they're not exactly next man up like some of these competitive window teams we talked about when injuries happen. Those guys kind of stepped up for a few weeks, the next man up mentality. The guys we're seeing come up now are guys that are going to be part of the future, right? These are guys that you're hoping will be part of the future, I should say.
So, I want to get to a couple guys. I mean, we'll touch on Crochet and some of this Dominic Fletcher stuff that you might have been reading about, and some of the stuff that Grafol has said. But in this win on Tuesday, where Crochet was awesome, and Blue Jays are not where they want to be. It's a very difficult AL East. Depending on who you talk to, some are saying, they missed their chance. They were building towards something and it just didn't quite happen. Watching them very, very closely against the Sox, especially when I was doing, Locked On White Sox, man, like the Blue Jays had lineups that if you slept on just one guy and you got comfortable in one situation, they could jump all over you and they could put 3-4 runs up in a heartbeat. They've got hitters, man. They had an offensive lineup. It's changed a little bit, especially this year. But in this win on Tuesday, you had Eloy Jimenez, who was, I believe, back at DH, and he left the game hobbling around third base, coming home to score. I believe it's a hamstring situation. Here's a guy that I was really bullish on at the beginning of the season. Hey, this guy, if he's even as I am about to say it, I start laughing. If he's feeling healthy, if he feels right, and he buys into the DH role, he's got a swing, he changed up his stance, all this stuff, hand placement, whatever. He could hit 20. He can hit 20 by the All-Star break, and maybe we flip him. He already has broken down once this year and has had some health issues. It's definitely heater time. It is absolutely heater time. Danny's got it. It's ready to go. And now you got this hamstring thing, which is, no stranger to hamstring stuff. But I don't even know how much time, how much time to even give this situation. I mean, it's no shock to any White Sox fan that's been following this guy since he came onto the ball club and came up and wearing a White Sox uniform. We've seen enough, all the talk, it's whatever. You are what you are. You cannot stay healthy. You can't be relied on. And I don't know what you would get for him at all at the deadline.
Well, it's difficult for me to even talk about at this point because I had such high hopes for him. The reality is on the post-game show tonight, I listened to Chuck and Ozzy a little bit, And Chuck brought up the fact that since 2019, and I don't remember the exact number, but it was over 400 games, and Eloy had roughly played about half of those games up until this point. You cannot have a guy who's only going to play 50% of the time be the guy that you're going to call your big banger in your lineup. This is the guy that's supposed to go out and hit 40 home runs a season. He doesn't have a position on the field that he plays particularly well or, even serviceable. And he can't run the bases. So, you made a prediction early on that Eloy might have, 20 by the All-Star break, or, might hit 40 before the season was over. And, we all thought that it might be a possibility if he stays healthy. Unfortunately, he's already had I wouldn't call it lengthy, but he's had a decent DL stint, IL stint early on this season, and he might be headed for another one. At this point, I almost have to agree with the chat. It might be time to cut bait with Eloy. I definitely don't see him being a part of this team next season.
No, neither do I, nor do I Moncada. I think Eloy and Moncada, anybody that does White Sox content creation and any White Sox fan out there, and you've been talking to friends, family, coworkers, other Sox fans, maybe you've just spent time thinking about Eloy and Moncada and what potentially could happen with them healthy in a White Sox uniform, providing for this team, putting up the individual numbers. All of that time, I think, wow, I don't want to say it's been wasted. We've had some interesting conversations I have with, Pat and all different, people that we've had on the show, or just in my life, just talking about the White Sox. But I want all of that to be over. Like, I don't think there's a lot of value in talking about what Eloy and Moncada could bring back, what we could get, what's their role. It's over. Yeah. I don't, to me, it's just a fool's errand to be talking about it.
You make an outstanding point about the amount of time that not just you and I and the other bloggers and podcasters, but White Sox fans in general have spent so much time talking about injured players. I mean, would it not be just the most amazing thing, even if this team wasn't the best team in the AL Central, but maybe a competitive team where you thought they could go out and win on any given night, and have a consistent lineup where you're not even thinking about this guy's going to go up and hit the ball into the ground, and in his first 4 steps down the first baseline is going to blow out a hip flexor or a hamstring or a quad. To me, right now, we have been so overrun with these types of running injuries for years that there isn't a guy on the team I don't worry about. Now, of course, it's been our top 3 guys that everybody's expected to be some sort of, something for the White Sox, somebody, a guy. And it's unfortunate that those 3, in Moncada, Eloy, and Robert are the ones that it happens to the most. But there isn't a player on this team that I don't feel like in any given moment can swing a bat and throw their back out before even starting running the bases, or take 2 steps and roll an ankle or pop a hamstring or whatever it is. And it's the amount of time wasted on that. And then just watching the games these days, the amount of, I won't say anxiety, but there's that little bit of anxietous butterflies watching the game, just feeling like at any moment anybody can be hurt. I'm waiting for the shoe to drop on Garrett Crochet or Eric Fetty. And that sucks because these guys are, out to great starts as pitchers. But it's almost like it's expected at this point, and it sucks.
Yeah, I hear you. You got to have thunder, man. You got to have lightning and thunder in your lineups. We saw it this past weekend, 100%. We saw it in New York. I mean, Soto, Stanton, and Judge. You see what the Phillies are doing. They've got the power. They've got the pop. Now, Yankees have dealt with injuries. Those guys, those studs have been, hurt. But I would like to know some of the. I got to really do a deep dive in the numbers, and I'm sure we've, it's been covered of when we've had Moncada, Aloy, and Robert, all playing at the same time. How much consistency, if any, that has given over the years. When they were all up, they were all in a White Sox uniform. How many games together out of the opportunities?
I feel like it was in the 150s at the start of the season. And that's going back, at least 4 or 5 years now. When did Robert was the last of the three to come up? When did he?
Robert was 20. I know he was there for 2020, wasn't he? Yeah, I mean he was, because he was an impact player in that A's playoff series, and he had impact that year. I mean, that was the shortened season, so it's like all those guys were able to hang in there because it was 60 games.
Well, and we're coming up. We're a third, or a little over a third. We're at about a third into this season, or a little over a quarter into this season, and I gotta say, that's 3+ years of baseball where we've only gotten 150 games or so out of those top three guys being together.
Yeah, that's not at all, not even close to what we were dreaming about, hoping for. Again, nothing's guaranteed, but that's why I hate to say you're worried about Crochet, and I don't want this to turn into
just worried about everybody, to be honest.
Well,
with you.
and that's where I think Chuck put out something, that falls under the FutureSox world of what the Birmingham Barons rotation looks like, and what is sitting there, in the pipeline, what we could see. And I've talked about it before, Danny. I'm just so fatigued and burned from the last time that I can't, as Johnny Nani would say, a Sox on tap, I can't get up for the letdown. Let me know, when those guys get in White Sox uniforms, and I'll take a good look and obviously be watching, like I am with Brian Ramos. Unfortunately, he was hurt and on the 10-day IL. Sounds like he's made some good progress, might be rehabbing. It might not be as serious, but that's where and I don't think it's like I'm trying to be negative. It's just realistic based off what we've lived through as Sox fans.
Yeah. And, you go back to when Rick and Kenny were putting together this, supposed competitive monster. And I remember like MLB.com putting out a tweet that was like they were predicting the next decade of World Series matchups. And the Sox were in there like 6 or 7, 8 times. I don't even know. It was like Sox Padres, like all the way down the line with, maybe I think Francisco might have been thrown in there once, and the Yankees. There was like some ridiculous. It was just ridiculous how much Sox and Padres were in there. And we had a farm system where we had those guys like Aloy, Robert, Moncada. You had Rex Specs. What was it? The guy they traded away.
Dane Dunning.
Thank you. God, Dane Dunong. You had the, just this list that like the top 10 in the White Sox organization were all guys that were expected to be impact players. And now we're in a situation where, sure, there's more depth, and the White Sox farm system is, Chris Sabo.
Chris Sabo. Yeah, hey, White Sox great, Chris Sabo.
Great White Sox legend, Chris Sabo. It was, it's just, it was a very top heavy farm system. Right now we've got a farm system where people are saying, oh, the White Sox are kind of climbing out of the bottom. And it's because we have more depth. The only problem with this now is we've got one guy, Colson Montgomery, who everybody in the world expects to be a guy. And then we got a bunch of pitchers who people are saying, pitchers are a little bit tougher to evaluate where they're going to go in their career, but there's a bunch of pitchers that are supposed to be guys, or possibly potentially could be guys. But after that, the position players are a little bit questionable. Jacob Gonzalez is a guy that a lot of people kind of forgot about because he went through some tough times, but is now kind of starting to pick it up a little bit. Everybody's hoping that Edgar Caro can be a guy here in a few years. There's the defensive guys in Burke. And
so,
things
Danny,
of that
let
nature.
me
But
ask you: is there a guy is there a name that some of these names you just mentioned? And we'll talk about it closer to the deadline there, where the Sox would trade at the deadline. They would say, you know what, you're never going to see a White Sox uniform. Like, we're going to package you with maybe something else that's on the MLB roster right now. In your mind, do you see guys that you're like, well, I could see the Sox, not even waiting for this guy. They might try to trade now.
To be honest with you, I don't see them moving too many of their pitchers. Just because of the simple fact is that, we have a rotation where there's some 1-year contracts, and they're going to need all the pitching help they can get. We're going through it right now where we're seeing pitchers kind of rotate, and we're going to need those guys. As far as position player goes, there are some guys that are a little bit further down the list, maybe, but it's unfortunate that I don't know what other teams are seeing in some of our prospects outside of what we're seeing. You know what I mean? Like, I think, especially here at FutureSox, we have some really good evaluators. We got some guys that are watching, some guys that are, like Ian watches more. I say this all the time, and I'll continue to say it. I'll say it over and over again.
Say it.
I think he watches more minor league baseball than the White Sox scouting department combined. To be honest with you,
it's a hell of a plug right there. Yeah.
Hey, listen, man, he's the hardest working guy in White Sox Twitter.
He is.
White Sox
I'll defend that. There's no doubt about that.
Pardon me. My question is how much are these other teams doing their due diligence on some of these guys that are further down the line as far as position players go? And the other part of it is I want to see some of these. Ian says he hopes not. Yeah, I hope not too, but goodness gracious. I mean, the track record over the years and some of the predictions you have made, you and I both made actually, unfortunately seem to come true more often than what the White Sox are feeding us through their own media. But anyhow, it's tough to say who would get packaged in a deal. I don't really have a guy that I want to see go right now. I have a lot of confidence in what Mike Shirley's been doing. I think this is a different organization than it was just a couple years ago when we talk about the farm system. And I want to, I don't want to sound like that traditional White Sox prospect hugger like we have been in the past because we've been kind of lied to. I'm taking it in a different route where I don't think people are giving them enough credit. Currently, and I'm actually gonna hug some of these guys that aren't getting enough credit. I would like to see them move up through the system. Ian says prospect huggers.
Well, Danny, maybe all of the hype that was around that previous crop, and the Mancadas, the Kopechs, the Birdie, Fulmer, all these guys that you had mentioned. There was a ton of hype. You were supposed to be the saviors. You were supposed to fix this organization. And that was a ton of pressure, based on what the organization was doing, not going to spend the money to put any capstone pieces, any veterans in place. It was really banking on these young guys to come in, and all of them hit, which is crazy. So I feel like that's where it's like, don't overhype this. Let them do what they're doing right now. That's a lot of pressure to put on some of these guys, because now we're all starting to get a little impatient. Come on. Like, when are we going to start seeing Montgomery? When are we going to start, seeing Schultz? When could we see, Thorpe? And, I would say just like, you'll see him when you see him, and not to put all of that weight on them, but that's unfortunately up to the organization. The organization shouldn't let them be the only ones that are going to turn things around. That's where I'm looking this off season. Like, a lot of money's off the books. What are you going to do? What are you going to do here?
There's the key right there. I hope that Jerry Reinsdorf, because of his comments, and I'm not holding my breath on any of this, but because of his comments and hiring Chris Getz and how he owed it to the fans to see this thing through in the quickest way possible, with all the money coming off the books this year, I hope they do go out and get some proven talent to supplement the players that are coming up through their farm system. I think maybe then, if you get somebody like that, where you can get him on a 4 or 5 year contract, a guy who has proven himself, over a few years in the majors already, in one of these positions where maybe some of these guys that are in the minor leagues are blocked, then we can start talking about trades. There just isn't a whole lot of position players on this team that are worth anything right now. And when you have that, my opinion is you've got to give these youngsters an opportunity to at least move up and show what they can do, until we do get, somebody with proven value at that particular position. Once they're blocked, sure, trade them, get what you can for them back. We talk about prospect huggers. There's been times where I feel like the White Sox have made some here. Perfect example. And I know his time at the major league level this year has been limited, but if you look at Boston and what is happening with Romy Gonzalez right now, there were a few of us that were not happy about him getting the DFA from the White Sox. And then he goes over to Boston, and it's like I said, small sample size, but he's hitting close to 350 with 8 RBIs. He only had 20 some at bats.
Could it be how he's managed, used, put in the lineup, who's around him, the culture? I mean, these are all things that we can't really, there's a lot of variables there, but I get your point.
There's some of that. I'm sure there's definitely some of that. But the reality is this was a guy who showed he could do it at every level before coming up to the White Sox, and they didn't really give him much of an opportunity. Every time he'd get a couple of bats here, a couple of bats there, and he was always, he was one of those guys, like a lot of our young prospects, who just needed consistency to show what they were capable of and make adjustments. And like Ian says, he is healthy-ish now too. So, I don't know. It's difficult to look at roster construction. And we've talked about this over and over again, but it hasn't really improved much. The 40 man was mismanaged throughout this entire offseason. We're still seeing the struggles with the 40 man right now. And it's difficult because of those struggles to even try to predict what's going to happen at the deadline and who's going to even be healthy enough to get you any value back.
Yeah, Clutch had mentioned in the chat, he doesn't want these guys to be rushed, but there really is zero excitability with this 2024 Chicago White Sox team. Now, a guy that threw on Tuesday night, he is kind of must watch right now in my mind. He reminds me of maybe Rodon 2021, the first half. Obviously, when Chris Sale was around, Dylan Cease during that, was it 2022? When was Dylan Cease on that heater that year and was runner up in Cy Young? All these years are starting to kind of blend in, but Crochet
22. Yeah, they are kind of, it's like Groundhog Day.
Yeah. Crochet, Crochet is doing some just really exciting things. 6 innings, only 2 hits, 1 walk, 4 strikeouts, 0 runs, his ERA sub 4. He's got some nasty stuff. He's coming at some crazy angles. His velocity's there. Obviously, he's in uncharted territory with his innings and everything right now. But that's the thing that I'm excited to watch. But like your earlier point, it's not only the health, which is where we're all geared as Sox fans. What's going to happen with this guy? Is it just a matter of time? I'm more of, I hate to say it,
isn't it?
Yeah, it is a shame. I don't want this to happen. I really want them to build around this guy, or at least like use him, in the future, retain him. But he's a guy that's probably going to command a ton of interest. I don't know how many innings he'll have in his arm post trade deadline. I don't know what the value would be, down the stretch. It would be more of, hey, we've got this guy, in our system. I think maybe Fetty, I don't think he's necessarily on an innings limit. Fetty might be more of a guy that's like, hey, we could use this guy in our rotation for the stretch. He's not on borrowed time like Crochet might be. But Crochet's the most exciting Sox player right now in my mind.
100%. And it just goes to show you that, when guys are not healthy, we talked about Brian Ramos a couple weeks ago and what he's been doing. And then, you get to a point where he's all of a sudden not playing because he's got some nagging issues, minor, but nagging issues. And you're like, well, okay, we'll see what happens when he makes his way back into the lineup and get some more playing time again. But Crochet is definitely the guy. I mean, who else on this team is really doing anything that's going to be here for the foreseeable future?
Tommy Pham is doing things, but he's not going to be around. Tommy Pham is playing like, get me out of here. Who is going to pick me up? He's playing for a second life this season.
Well, and I think he's doing the job that he's been brought in to do. And that was to kind of light a fire under some of these young guys. And, I hate to use this word again, but he's a guy who's been a part of winning culture. He knows what it takes. He might be a little brash. He might be, a little bit in your face type of guy. But I think that's something that maybe this White Sox team had been missing. Tony La Russa seemed to, kind of change his whole coaching perspective and his whole approach, I should say, from when he was coaching in the, with the Cardinals organization and, in part of the Angels organization, in the front office, where he was known as a hard-nosed kind of guy, and everybody kind of knocked him for being this old manager who wasn't going to be able to mesh with the young guys. And I think he got soft, and that softness made the players soft. They needed somebody. They didn't need a friend. They needed a coach. They needed somebody who's going to push
They absolutely
them.
did. I mean, I think back to, how some of those contracts were handed out before guys had much of a major league career at all. They were throwing big money for not really accomplishing much. And I think they believed into their own hype. They believed
Absolutely.
into what everybody was saying about them. And I look at the La Russa thing sometimes as La Russa might not have thought he was going to have to manage as much as he had to manage. I mean, he probably looked at that lineup and that roster and what the organization was kind of planning on doing and said, wow, I mean, this is like turnkey ready. Yeah, I don't have to do much here. I mean, yeah, we've got a hell of a team. Like, look at this. Yeah, I could do this. I can get back into a uniform for this. I shouldn't really have to do much. And that was not the case.
Yeah, no. And I don't really know, Pedro Grifol coming in after him, whose idea that was. I don't really know. I don't really care. But the thing is it's pretty obvious that he was in over his head with what had been going on over the last couple of years. It was a big hole to dig out of, and I don't know a first-time manager should have been put in that position. And now we've got Tommy Pham, who comes in here, and that guy, when his career is over, might be somebody that a team will pick up as a coach if Tommy Pham is interested in coaching. Because, I mean, it's pretty obvious that the Pham effect is a real deal. He came in here and guys started doing things they were supposed to do.
That's the Elvis Andrus effect. Didn't that happen when Elvis Andrus came over? What was it?
A little bit.
Was it 2022? Tim Anderson went down and we brought in Elvis Andrus, and all of a sudden he was taking over this leadership role. He would come in and try to calm down a pitcher. He was kind of vocal, explaining about, successes, ups and downs he has had, trying to take on that veteran leader role. And so, I mean, it's sad kind of that's where we have to go. Like we got to go for Tommy Pham, who's going to light a fire under these guys, which was already supposed to be lit. Like they were all supposed to be on this, chip on your shoulder. No one's giving you a chance coming into the season. Everybody's saying 0.0%. You're going to make the playoffs. You're going to, postseason and beyond, all that stuff. And, Grifol, like kind of using that as motivation, but none of that works. So you got to go get Tommy Pham, and he's going to be the one that's going to light something.
It seems really, really. I don't even know if it seems. It's one of those things where you would hope that your manager would be able to accomplish the things that Tommy Pham has accomplished in a few short weeks in the organization with the players. Now, I don't know if there's a disconnect because I'm coach, you're player. I don't really relate to you very well. You've never been a manager before. And now Tommy Pham comes in and he's like, I've been doing this, the same thing that you're doing now, you youngsters. I've been doing this a long time and I've been part of winning teams and none of you have. Maybe that's where the disconnect is. But you would hope that the manager that they brought in to usher in a new era would be able to accomplish these things on his own. And it was pretty obvious that he wasn't able to do that.
Here's something from what our manager said just before Monday's game, which was start of the Toronto Blue Jays series. Dominic Fletcher, back, with the organization, back up with the big league club, a guy that, I was kind of interested to see for who they traded for. And he hadn't had an at bat since his return. I don't believe he had an at bat on Tuesday. I'm looking to see. Oh, he did. He came in and he pinch hit for Remillard. So
he did
before Monday's game. The start of the series. This is what Grifol had to say about kind of Fletcher being MIA. Gavin is hitting third. Pham is hitting first, and Benny is a consistent pillar in our lineup. He'll come in for defense and do some stuff. He has to wait for an opportunity, speaking of Fletcher, and take advantage of it. That pillar that Grifol was speaking of, our fearless leader, he was not in the lineup on Tuesday, and the Sox ended up winning that game. Grifol went on to talk about how, he's not going to give fans any BS. Benintendi just needed to kind of sit and work on some stuff. So that pillar, that consistent pillar.
Fletcher was inches away from a dinger in that one at bat. I mean, he got off the top of the wall, if I'm not mistaken, coming in for Sheets. And again, we talked about Sheets. Sheets, they said on the broadcast that he was brought in as a defensive replacement when the Sox had a lead late in the game. You know what I mean? But why? I know you want to get Sheets' bat in the lineup the way he's been kind of he's making really good contact, even when he's not getting on base. He just looks like he's turned a corner. But again, we're talking about Andrew Vaughn not doing anything. Gavin Sheets is playing the outfield, and you've got capable outfielders on this team. Oh, it was Mendick.
Yeah, Mendick just missed one, but yeah, it's, Grifol, he kind of threw Brian Ramos under the bus, I think, last week, calling him out about, missing a sign and something shouldn't have been as close, when he pulled a hamstring or came up lame and had to go on the IL. Grifol has this way about protecting veterans. Boy, will he protect veterans no matter what. But anytime a young guy, a rookie, an unproven quote-unquote player does something or doesn't do enough, you hear about it. Grifol will absolutely air those grievances through the media. And this was another, okay, are you protecting Benintendi because you used to play with him, in Kansas City? He has made, he's signed for the amount of money that he signed. I mean, we talked about Andrew Vaughn going down, Benintendi go down and just figure some stuff out, man. We can have somebody else with your arm in left field.
Well, I mean, you know what? I'm going to stop. I don't really have a comment on that. Honestly, I don't.
Are you
You've already said
defending
it.
Benintendi? Do you want you don't think he should go down or at least be in
No,
that conversation?
to be honest with you, I don't feel like there's anybody that on his team that is gonna be a force in that corner outfield spot. Give somebody else a shot. Sure.
He's not a force. I wouldn't call him a force out
that's
there.
what I'm saying. I just don't know if anybody is. I don't know if anybody is. Again, we're getting into roster construction where we're not getting enough production out of our corner outfielders. Plain and simple.
That's something that it's driven me crazy as a Sox fan, and I know it has from so many other people. I've heard from them, and I've heard it talked about over the years. We constantly, off season after off season, we are blind to the issues. We completely ignore, and we try to go dumpster diving, or we try to go to the Dollar Tree and say, well, this will be fine, but it's fine for like maybe a half a season, maybe not even that.
Yeah, and I was going to say, you're lucky if you get that.
Yeah, and here we go again. It's not only do we hopefully, can spend the money on impactful studs, man, the Thunder and Lightning I was talking about, but you also have to figure out, who is your long-term second baseman? Your right fielder for sure. You got Benintendi for what, another year under contract?
Yeah.
There's a lot of decisions. Drew Bogues put out in the chat several minutes ago, and I put it up there, but we didn't get to talk on it. Like, who's your 2025 guys that you're saying these are definitely guys that are going to be on the roster? Can you say with confidence Luis Robert Jr., Ramos, Crochet, Corey Lee? I mean, there are few. It's a handful of guys.
Well, and the other thing I saw in the chat, right, going back to about that same time, was Ian saying that there's maybe on the entire 40-man roster right now. And we're talking about right now. Obviously, next season, that 40-man roster is going to get shaken up quite a bit. But on the 40-man roster right now, there's 10 to 12 guys maybe that, you might have hopes for. You might be interested in. And of those 10 to 12 guys, there's 4 or 5 that you're really interested in. That's awful.
It's absolutely insane. That's what gives you, that's going back to, the game that I went to with my son and, my wife and my folks, where you could just kind of like be a fan and just appreciate this little moment here and the fun stuff about going to an actual live game with a kid that's brand new to it. Like, this is his introductory into baseball, and he's experienced all these things for the first time. It's not boring and old and just routine. When you bring up stuff like that about what the future is like, I just want to go back to just having a milkshake, meeting Southpaw, watching an Andrew Vaughn home run. Just
stinking milkshake! Damn that thing! I'm telling you, man.
It's a chocolate malt. It's what it is. But because it has taken this entity and it's on commercials, and it's like, this is the thing, It's like, well, I'm here. I'm going to just
throw a charred marshmallow in it and try to sell it off as like a s'more, but whatever.
Now, I will say this, Danny, the customer service that I experienced, and again, there was nobody at the game. So I know people have had different takes when there have been 20,000+. I think there's only been 5 games of the however many opportunities where they've drawn more than 20,000. But the customer service was really good, above and beyond. Just, can I help you with anything? Like smiles, just like, what can I do for you? How can I make this experience a better experience? That was a little something different. So you got to think that
I noticed
they're getting talked to.
I noticed that. Maybe the amount of fan complaints is finally done something. I don't really know, but it definitely seems like in the couple of games that I've been to this year, my experience has been a little bit better in that department. Actually, quite a bit better in that department as well. Last year, I experienced closed concession stands or stands that were sold out of things in the second and third inning that you're like, wait a minute, these are staples. Why are we sold out? Didn't really see it. Now, again, I've only been to 2 games so far. I do plan on going to a few more, but uh, it feels like a different experience. So I'll give you that for sure, 100%.
Yeah, I plan
And
on
I
going
see,
to a few more. I'd like to hit that. I usually hit the Hawaiian shirt game that's coming up in I think June 8th or 9th. It's a Saturday. That's a
you
fun
like
one.
that?
I do. I think I've got every single Hawaiian shirt that they've given
Okay.
out.
All
Yeah.
right. I wasn't a fan of this year's design. I mean, my wife and I
I
actually were talking about it tonight when they showed
Last
it
year's
on
design was
screen.
better. Last year's
Yeah.
design was outstanding, and the feel of the shirt. They went with a different type of, like, I don't know,
Material.
Hawaiian shirt provider, and it was a different. It was better fit. It was a great shirt. I don't mind the design. It's not as loud and kind of out there, and I like the incorporation of some of the White Sox logos. It's just
That
I
I
you
did
know
like. I
so
did. I was hoping for more is all. Looking at
we all
past.
want more. We're always wanting more. I
Well,
want more bobblehead giveaways. There's only been two. There's a Luis Robert Jr. and then there's a Frank Thomas back-to-back MVP 93-94, I think, later in the year. That's
if this team
ridiculous.
was winning, I would say I really don't give a rip about any of the
Of
promotional
course.
nights. But
If this team was
unfortunately,
winning, if this team was winning, Danny, John Schriffen is the safest man in all of the world. Nobody talks about him. There are no beefs. There are no arguments. We're not nitpicking. We don't care. We
well,
do not care. He's hiding
before
in
we
plain
get
sight.
before we get into a little bit more of John Schriffen, because I don't want to forget this, and I don't want to get too far away from
Sure.
it, but it was asked that you rate
Sure. Okay.
the
Yeah, I saw that
milkshake,
clutch.
and
Yeah.
I would like to get your take
Yeah.
on it.
Well, out of a 1 to 10, 1 is basically essentially you're just it's like a weird slushy just chocolate milk, and a 10 is a 10 is a place that is one of those old like soda jerk, like those, like, what I'm talking, like you go to Galena or something and they've got those confectionaries, those old time malt shops, and like these malts are just, holy cow, like this is just a
For me, that
craft
was
malt.
Gertie's, Lindy's on 55th.
Sure,
and,
yeah, absolutely.
Kenzie
Margie's
back in the day.
Candies, I think
Yeah.
that was something up on the north side in like the North Park, Lincoln Square area, if I remember years ago. I mean, it was tasty. That's the thing. I would put it in like a 7 out of 10.
Okay.
It had a malt type of taste. It wasn't super thick like a McDonald's milkshake or anything where you're like, man, there's just no way. It was drinkable right from the beginning. The toasted marshmallows, the whipped cream, and it was the heavy whipped cream. This wasn't just like, the cheap ready whip. It was
There you go.
it was thick.
Yeah, good.
There you go.
So yeah, I just wanted to get your thoughts
There you
on
go.
that.
Yeah.
I would say I was probably somewhere in the same range. I think I'd probably be closer to like a 6 than a 7 for me. It was mid. it was mid to me. It wasn't this thing that they've been selling it up to be. I guess maybe let's go down that route where I felt like the hype that surrounded this thing did not suit the milkshake. It's pretty to look at. Don't get me wrong. And if you don't get one early in the game, if you're going on one of the weekend games, they only make so many of them. I believe it's 400.
Let me tell you how this is how I got it though. Like I had stadium club passes. So I got these tickets from, a connection. I got 4 tickets, and then I got also accompanying stadium club passes. And we ate before the game in the stadium club, and that was on the menu. Right there is the campfire milkshake, is like a dessert. So it's like I didn't have to go hunting it in like the Vizzy section or anywhere. It was right there. It's on the menu. Boom. It's going to be served to me here.
Yeah, the Vizzy bar, they sell out pretty quickly over there.
Yeah, so it was kind of a no-brainer. It's like, let's do it. If we're going to do it, just do it right here.
Yeah, absolutely. Good for you, man. And I'm glad you enjoyed it. It like I said, it wasn't terrible. It just didn't meet the hype.
It's not terrible. It's It's enjoyable.
It was decent.
Yeah. I mean, it's one, hey, it's a 2024 experience. It's what that is. Who knows?
It might be the only 2024
Right.
experience outside of a Garrett Crochet season.
Right.
Please, Lord.
So we got
crossing my fingers. But
I mean, if you want to talk Schriffen, we can talk Schriffen. That was a big, man. That was another dust up over the last several days. Man,
yeah, Shane Reardon. Boy, yeah, it's
670 the
score
score
came down for a little bit. Yeah, whole 9 yards.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, White Sox Twitter blew up. It was just one of those things. And my thought is I'll just say this. I don't want to get into this big dust up like everybody else is. Is Schriffen over the top, in your opinion?
Over the top of what he's kind of done with the score and like this little tiff, or just over the top as a play-by-play?
In general, as a
I think John Schriffen is trying really hard to drum up some excitement that's just not organically there, and as a first time, play-by-play guy with one team. I know he's done it in other opportunities, but like he is the White Sox play-by-play guy. And I think he knows wasn't going to be a very good year, or maybe he didn't know. Maybe he just doesn't know how to handle it or take it. Like, I think he's trying to do what he thinks is natural with, like, I'm going to try to manifest the excitement and create things that sound bigger than they absolutely are, hype things up more than they need to be hyped. And I think a lot of Sox fans that have been around for a while are like, easy, we can watch this with our own eyes. We know what's going on. But I think he's going to get better. Like, he just is. How he is now is not the way he's going to be at the end of the season or next year. Like, he's going to look back at
spamming the chat, by the way, right now with all of John's calls here.
Sure. I mean, I get why he's doing it. He's trying to create, some excitement for the audience, and maybe that was a message from top down. It's just, you got to really sell this. You're going to really have to sell this team. And he's trying to find the balance and how to do that when he's not being given a lot of fuel.
Yeah. My only concern, and I kind of agree with you on the fact that he'll probably get better as time goes on. Again, going back to watching his highlight videos of calling football games and all, other baseball games, his highlight calls sound fantastic, but then you look at the White Sox situation and you're trying to find highlights, and you're really, really going out of your way to overhype some of these highlights. The Corey Julks catch over the wall.
Yeah.
Yesterday.
Or
was that the day before? Yesterday. I kind of went, yeah, it's a little cringe, man. Like, are you kidding me? Dude, take it. Like, get hyped, but take it back just a notch, because it's
what I would say
is it sounds forced. It feels forced. And
Danny, I don't know if you
were more
this,
genuine, I think White Sox fans would probably take you a little bit more seriously. But at the same time, I could care neither here nor there right now, because I do feel like he's going to get better, and everybody should get off the guy's back. If this is your concern in this 2024 season on how bad this baseball team is, and you feel like Schriffen is making things worse and less enjoyable for you, mute it. Move on.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting that a lot of people are complaining that they're not even going to watch the team, but all of a sudden they're going to complain about, the play-by-play guy.
Right.
I was before, years ago, almost a lifetime ago. You know this, I think, and I've talked about it a little bit on Good Guys Talk Back. I did theater, improv, comedy, acting in Chicago for many years. Second City, Annoyance Theater, up and down. It was what I did. I loved it, and the message was always, it's a lot easier to scale back. So go big and then scale back than to try to force yourself to, go bigger, so right now he's big. He's at a 10 or 11. So it'll be easier for him to scale back a little bit instead of trying to figure out, how to get more intense. That would be a challenge. So I think he's got a good problem if he's going to try to scale back a little bit and find a good medium. But this is just what a year to do this. It's like he's going to say to himself after this year, he's like, man, if I could survive 2024, and I think we're all saying it as Sox fans, I could probably survive anything.
Yeah, and I agree with you. And you actually made a really good point right there in being able to scale back, because if this team is good over the next couple of years and John Schriffen is still here, or Schifrin is still here, whatever.
Schriffen.
Thank you. Lord, I have gone back and forth saying it the wrong way, and I hate that. I hate when people do names wrong, so I got to make sure I get it right. But anywho, imagine if he's here. Imagine the White Sox go out and they spend some money this offseason, and we get a couple of these youngsters that come up, and they're much better, much improved team next year and the following year and the year after that, to the point where we now feel like we're competitive in the Central again, and the Sox are doing good things. How do you go up from where you're at right now when things actually deserve to have that kind of hype? And I just, yeah, imagine, Ian. Imagine all the things I say working out. It's a lot of what ifs in there again, but if imagine just for a moment. No, I just don't see that him being able to go up and not have that feel forced as this does right now.
Well, and if things hit and this team gets back to its winning ways in a year or two, probably two, and we have genuine moments, then it's not going to feel forced. It will come natural. He won't feel like he has to manifest, and it's probably going to sound a little different, because it is so genuine, because of how the team's playing, and a situation or a big win, a much needed win against a division rival or something.
And I don't say I hope so for the fact of Schriffen. I hope so because the White Sox are actually, decent.
Yeah. Hey, we had a White Sox winner today. We continued the Tuesday winning ways. It is, I mean, I say it, and I absolutely mean it when, people, Sox fans, give us their time with everything that's going on. Time's valuable, and when you're like, "Hey, I'm gonna jump in, and I'm gonna join the comments. I'm gonna listen to the audio." It means a ton. It absolutely does. I mean, it's for a fan-centric podcast, it's the fuel. And love all the chats, great comments, a lot of good stuff. Subscribe to the Future Sox YouTube channel. Pass it along.
Button.
Smash the like.
Help us out, man.
All of that good stuff, Danny. It is. I feel better talking with you, and hopefully, it's reciprocal.
100%. I'm not gonna lie, I missed you last week, man. But I'm glad you were able to get out and enjoy some time with the fam. So
it's going to happen throughout the year. You and I might have to miss, and it's okay.
Well, this is the year to do it, right?
it really is. So Danny Miller at Danny Miller FS. I am Nick Murawski at Nick_GGTB. Check out Future Sox on Twitter X at Future Sox, and all the good stuff that everybody from Future Sox is working on, because again, it's obvious. The future is not really at 35th and Shields. It is in all different kinds of cities that maybe players that we don't even know about yet, that are going to be sprinkling on this team in 2025 and beyond. So check out all the content creators, everything that Future Sox has going on. For Danny Miller, I'm Nick Murawski. Until next time, go